And we're back. Welcome back to another episode of Underground Antics. I'm Shane. He's Chris. And today we're going to get right into it. Chris, before the mic's heated up, you're telling me about this video you watched.
Yes, I stumbled across it. The darkness of YouTube. And it was a 30-minute excerpt of a lecture given by an OG hip-hop rapper named KRS-One.
KRS-One. How do you pronounce that?
How do you
pronounce that? Is it just like that? You got to say the letters. There's
you got to say the letters.
Yeah.
I think it's
like B.O.B., you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think it stands for something to do with like knowledge supreme, or I don't know. I should probably get that right.
And then one.
And then one. Yeah.
Yeah. The first of the kind. First of the lineage.
I think so. Could be.
Yeah, man. His son will be KRS-2.
KRS-One Junior.
Oh yeah, KRS-1J.
Yeah.
So anyway, what was he talking about?
He was talking about God, and he was talking about how that concept, just to not give it a gender, I suppose, lives within us. And it's something. Mm-hmm. He tells it as like kind of like he shares it as like ancient knowledge, and he says like this was something known to like our ancestors, and specifically he's talking about his African ancestors and how like God was never something that was outside of them. It was always something that lived inside them, so they could choose to see God in anyone. And I feel like that does stretch through a lot of other kind of religions, except for Catholicism, and I guess other ones as well. And so he had a little bit of a feud there, just being like, it got a little complicated. But the main idea was just that God is within us, which me, growing up Catholic, is actually, it's counter to what I was originally told about this idea of God, right? Mm-hmm. So usually when I hear something like that, I'm very, I'm very, I have to think about it for a second, So I was just wondering, like, what do you think about that?
So that's a very interesting line of thinking, right? It brings to mind a question of like, okay, so I haven't seen this video yet, so we'll just go with, from there. But is he talking about it in the sense of like, God is everything, including me, and so my essence is one with God, and so is everyone and everything else's.
Yeah.
And we might not see it that way all the time, or be taught that that's how it is, but he's saying like that the wisdom traditions or the ancient teachings have always known that there is this, divinity within everyone and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting, because like, so I'm Jewish, so I haven't had the Catholic upbringing, but I have heard of like Christ consciousness. Have you've heard of that?
Yeah,
too,
totally.
presumably, yeah. So isn't that something that like lives, well, not lives, but exists in or as you, or is it more like how were you taught it? Like, is it something to like aspire to, or is it something that works with you or through you, or what's the deal with that?
It's funny because they basically taught us it without teaching us the kind of magic of it. Because there's this quote that's very popular, is "What would Jesus do?" Right? And
WWJD.
WWJD. And for a long time,
I have that tattooed on my chest.
Oh, of course you do.
like the thug life tattoo, WWJD.
Just like a good common Jew
Yeah.
tattoo.
We all have it.
That's great, man. That's so great. I heard that all the time. And And I guess it made sense or whatever. I mean, but then I guess at one point they don't teach you that like what Christ was or what he was is something you can become or you can aspire to. You know what I mean? It was just like, that's him and we're different kind of thing. But there's this little loophole,
Right.
which is that saying, which is what would Jesus do? And I think at one point when I was a kid, I was just like, oh wait, I know what Jesus would do. Right?
Just like intuitively.
Just intuitively. You can connect to that. I mean, it's an idea, Christ consciousness. I mean, you could even say, what would God do? But I mean, that's, a little vaster. So I guess having it in human form kind of makes it easier to aspire to, right? And
Yeah, well, what's interesting about like Jesus is that the image of like Christ on the cross is like an archetypal image, right? Of like the worst thing happening to the best possible person, right? So he was, the most virtuous of all people, let's say, as an archetype. And, they killed him for it. Or they tortured him and then killed him, which is not so great. But what's interesting is that it's also a symbol for like the divine, right? And that it there's something in that symbology of like, there's, I don't quite know how to like characterize it, but there's something about the archetype of like Jesus as the, archetypal human where there's like this sense of trust in God and trust in like willingness to participate in life, right? And like live it fully, knowing that like you're gonna die anyway and go willingly towards that, right? And what's fascinating to me about, Christian teachings and Christian mysticism particularly is that essence of like, along the lines of what you're saying of WWJD, what would Jesus do, is that there's always a sense of like, oh, you can be like that, right? That's in you, or as you, maybe. And there's some choice in the matter of like, if you're making a decision or you got something to do, you could be like, what's the right thing to do here, right? And it brings in a question of like, I guess, morality, like right and wrong, but we don't have to go down that path. But it's just, what's interesting about it is like, because it's definitely a very powerful image, right? And it's I mean, I don't know where I was going with that thought, but
so you're talking about Jesus on the cross as the powerful image, or just
and then but beyond that, like, because that's a tangent to our conversation. What's okay, one step back. So I see religions as twofold, right? I think there is an essential truth that is similar to all religions.
Right, the
right?
perennial philosophy.
Correct. And and the overarching or underlying philosophy, you could say, of all like religious traditions. But then what happens is the various like interpretations and conceptualization of these like teachings or whatever, or these philosophies, whatever it is, it's like once people start getting involved and trying to think things through, like that's when things diverge and become complicated, and things are subject to interpretation instead of just like accepting the wisdom tradition, the essence of it, which I think underlies all religions, like fundamentally, is that there's something there that people are drawn to or that they resonate with. And, sure, a lot of it's taught and things like that, but these systems survive for thousands of years, right? It's not like an accident. Like there's something, and, it's not necessarily all good. Like there's some bad shit that goes down in all religions for numerous like human mistakes or whatever it is, but that essence of it, where it's like the Christ consciousness or your Buddha nature or your higher self, or I think that these like states of being or these states of mind, you could say, that all these religions like talk about aspiring towards in order to live a good life, right? And it's depending on which like concept or framework you use, you can talk about it differently. But ultimately, I think that there's an essential message, or not even a message, just in Buddhism, it's like the no self, right? It's the emptiness, right? It's the transcendent, you could say. Maybe applies better to like across various religions, where it's like, yes, these are the messages and the teachings, right? But what transcends that? Like, what is it about these things that are going to be for your betterment ultimately, and the betterment of the world, right? And and what's interesting is that there's like various theories and interpretations in different religions, and so people's ideas of like what constitutes living that way would look like, right? And so there's various practices and prayers and meditations and things like that, and they're all equally good, or maybe not equally, but they're all good in and of themselves, in that they like teach and point towards this ultimate teaching. And one way you could say that, I guess, is that everything in the universe is one, and you could say that existence is a unity or a whole, and you can call that God if you want, and that we are part of that, well, not part of it, but like, yeah, we're part of it, but not part of it at the same time,
Yeah.
Did that make sense, or was that kind of like very wordy?
Well, we are using words, so
it's true.
It's hard to
Gotta
get around
communicate
here.
somehow.
No, yeah, I've definitely noticed that as well. Reading different texts,
right,
and stuff like that. I mean, I find that an interesting thing, and it's like how many different ways there is to talk about it. The Buddha consciousness, the Christ consciousness. But like in Buddhism, they talk about it as you already are it. It's like it's done, right? There's nothing to aspire to, right? So maybe that has like a different layer of kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that, yeah, that makes more sense to me, because where I connect with that is it's like everyone, you are that already, right? But you just don't know it, or you think otherwise. And so the mistake lies in like, or the mistake or the illusion or whatever it is lies within like the realm of human intellect, as opposed to in being itself. And then, we think or we feel disconnected from reality or from other people or from the world. And so what we like then just feel ourselves as like separate beings, and then we become like a personality that is trying to do things and trying to figure out and work through the universe, instead of like allowing the universe to just play its natural course and we go with it, right? We're constantly like fighting and trying and choosing. And I guess you're right, like some religions emphasize choice more than others do, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't really know where that stems from.
So back to the KRS-One guy. So what's his music about? Like, what does he produce that you like?
It's pretty political. The music, it's pretty political, and it's like very like aggressive. Like he's a big guy. He's like a really big guy. He's got like a really low voice, and it's still kind of like I think he released a record like I think this year, and I think it's like I don't know his like 30-second album or something.
What?
Yeah, he's got a huge discography.
That's insane. I've never even heard of people having that many albums before.
Yeah, it's very rare. It's very
Yeah.
rare.
I mean, that's like pumping out like one a year for like 30 years.
I think that's what he's done because he's been making music since like probably the late 70s.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense then. You know, he just
Still
kept
crazy.
going. Yeah, kept doing it, which is awesome. Doing what he loves, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, it just kind of took me off guard, I think, just hearing it from such a strange source. Because, like, you're usually, because context is, like, also very important with these, how we receive these messages and stuff like that. Gurus and spiritual teachers or religious texts, right? But then to hear it from, like, a rapper, it was, like, it made it more human in a sense, It was like,
That's awesome.
Right here. Like, that's where it happens kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd bring
I
it
like
up.
that.
I thought I'd share that. Yeah, it was cool. Right?
No, it's cool. And you know what's weird is that like you never know how or when or where a message is going to connect with you. You know, like a lot of the times, I was actually having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day where it's like, we often try and solve other people's problems for them and, show them a way of being differently or doing differently when they're struggling. And what that never really works because they have to do it themselves, right? And so what we were talking about is when you're conversing with someone, right, you don't know how your words are going to be received by that person. And they're very often not received in the way that you intended them to, or what we had found was that like actually what you thought were the like the deep, I guess you could say, like if you're like having it like a deep conversation, you could be like, oh, we were talking about this and this, and that was really deep, and then yet there was just like one sentence or one example that for some reason that you just like grab onto and it like resonates with you, right? And then it sticks with you, and it can come from anyone, right? It's just like a sentence or an idea, and it can stay with you and change essentially the whole way you view something or the way you view everything, right? And they'd often spoken about how like the power of an idea to change the world, right? And you can see this a lot in like revolutions and things like that, where there's this like one central idea, often, confined to a sentence or a phrase that like embodies the whole thing and like contains such power behind it that it, transforms political systems or causes a lot of trouble or violence or things like that. But nevertheless, it's like something someone said one time, for some reason it just clicked something inside you and you just like never forgot it, or like an example, or not an example, like a parable or an aphorism or something like that, where it's just like it seems it's just a sentence, but for some reason it like hits deep, and the other person, because I find myself in a couple times where this has happened to me, someone will come up to me and be like, yo, do you remember, like last year or 2 years ago when you said this and this? And I will be like, no, I do not remember that at all. I mean, I don't remember most of my conversations. Like, I mean, I can recall them, but like, I don't remember exactly what I say.
Yeah.
Some people are lucky and they can, but not me. But anyway, so I'll be like, I don't remember saying that. Like, it sounds like something I probably would say. So I believe you. And I'm glad that, you found it helpful or whatever it was. But like, I don't even remember talking about that. And they'll be like, yeah, that, like I really remembered that. And like, that helped me shift my perspective on something. Does that happen to you?
Usually with music. Like, usually people will come up to me and just be like, I mean, like, I usually get it like after a show, or like my music has inspired and helped people. Like sometimes people come up to me and they're crying. Like that's happened a few times, which still amazes me.
Nice.
And then I think What
How
was
do
the
you
most
feel when that happens to you?
I don't know. Warm. It's just the coolest thing,
It's
man.
not, yeah. It's not a
It's the
trick
coolest
question.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've never put a word to it though. It's just it really is. It makes it all worth it. You know what I mean? Because like I
Mm-hmm.
find a lot of the time I'm always chasing something. You know, for the
Right.
it's just like what I do. I'm looking for new sounds or new ways to do things or song ideas, and so most of the time it's just like exploring without finding anything, right? And then every once in a while I'll find something and somehow organize everything enough that I get the opportunity to share it with people. And then when
Mm-hmm.
that happens, when they come up to me after a show, or like I see people affected like that, or like a year later they'll come and they'll be like, yo, I started playing piano because of you. Like, I don't know, it's just like those experiences make it all feel worth it, which is weird because you would think it'd be like the money or the babes, but it's not.
All
I
the
don't get either of
babes.
those. But it's really those
Right.
moments. It's like being able to touch
Yeah.
someone in a
Mm-hmm.
non-sexual way.
Yeah, no, I know what you meant. Connecting.
Connecting, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
in this world that seems so separate.
Yeah, it's weird because you connect over this piece of music or something like that, and yet you don't know anything about the person, and they don't necessarily know anything about you either. But it doesn't matter because there's that shared connection, right?
Mm.
And when you get to make that happen, that's just even, that's even better.
Mm.
Um, yeah, that's crazy. Do you find that like the songs that you make that you think are gonna like be a hit usually are, or do you find that like, well, you make a bunch of songs and then one that you were like, that one's okay, that's the one that people like really like for some reason?
Well, I don't really have much proof of that regarding like
Mm,
big smashing hits or whatever. Um,
sure, but just with people who hear what you know.
no, usually like I know
Mm,
when I've written a nice song. Um,
feels right.
yeah, yeah, it does. It just feels right. Um,
When
I've
you
never
write
tried
songs, do you
that.
usually start with the sound or do you start with the lyrics?
Um,
Or is that a silly question?
no, no,
I've
it's not
never
a silly
written before.
question. It's not a silly question. I mean, there's like, yeah, no, there's tons of ways to go about writing songs,
Mm-hmm.
but for the ones that have like clicked, I, I'd have to say I start with the music.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say start with the music because the music is the thing that like pulls me in to like the moment, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm in it. I'm in like this little musical space, and then I can use I usually just like use my direct experience, like whatever I'm going through right now, or like what I see in front of me and how it makes me feel. Like I usually let that kind of momentum create something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's usually the music, and then some kind of lyrics will come, and then I'll try to build a story off of that. But yeah, it's usually like I just wait for that click. Like I'm just looking for
Right.
that click, that moment where, oh, there's something there, and then I build like a story around that.
That's cool. What a process. Do you enjoy the process? Obviously, I suppose. But I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been finding the trick is like consistency, because like I mean, the more consistent that I am with it, like doing something every day, the more the more I can see how it works,
mm-hmm.
because like between the song, so I wrote a song today that I was really happy with, and the last good song I wrote was maybe 5 months ago. You know,
Mm-hmm.
those are like a
But you've written
long.
in between.
Yeah, I've written almost every day. I'm writing poetry. I'm always like making something. And sometimes it
Yeah.
has nothing to do with it. And I'm like I consider myself like a strange kind of musician because I do so much. I produce music. I play classical piano. I like playing jazz. I songwrite. I chant. You know, like I don't know. Music's just everything to me. So one of these things seem to pick up sometimes.
Yeah.
And yeah. But yeah,
I mean,
it's a strange process.
What's that expression? You got to throw a bunch of shit at the wall till one of them sticks, or something like that. You know?
Yeah, exactly. That is actually my process. I've heard a different process where you actually shoot your arrow at the wall and then draw the bullseye around it, which is also interesting.
That is interesting. Well, yeah. I mean, but then how do you improve if you're just creating your targets after you've shot your arrow, you know? I guess you just keep doing it and you get better at drawing the target.
Yeah, right.
You know?
It's just, yeah, exactly. Because some people can get so lost around like, is this right? Is this right? Like if you just decide this is the thing you're working with and then try to grow that, you know, you might get somewhere, you might not. But there's always like something I'm trying to remember is there's like always somewhere to move. The true experience of not knowing what to do is very rare. You know, it's very rare to be like, because that means you're on the precipice of what you're doing. You're on the front of like novelty almost, where it's like this has never been done before. But most of the time we're just like we're bored or we're foggy headed. You know, we're not breathing properly. We're not drinking enough water. You know, because really there's always something to do. There's always some. You know, you hit something and you just roll. You know, you just roll around it. Like there's no still unchanging point in the entire universe.
Right.
That's the kind of spiritual way I see it. That's like sort of comes from Buddhism for me, where it's like everything's changing all the time.
Right.
So when you hit a wall, it's not really a wall. You know, you're just pushing against something that's also, you know, there's always a way to move with it, try something else, reframe the idea, etc., etc. So that helps me kind of just always, that helps me grow in a sense, you know, because it's so easy to like do your research, find out this is how things are usually done, and then end up doing all of those things, but not achieving what you want. Right. So
it's interesting how that works, eh?
Yeah, exactly. It is interesting.
You're like, man, I did fucking everything right and nothing worked out.
Exactly. And because I don't think that's where like inspiration comes from. It comes from breaking those molds. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Because what it's interesting about like the objects or the obstacles that come up, right? Because like a lot of spiritual teachings talk about how, you know, I believe this is one of the Zen ones is like the obstacle to the way is the way.
Exactly.
Right? Where it's just like, it feels like an obstacle. But you know, okay, wait, hang on. So here's what's really cool, is that what's really weird about like difficulties and tough situations in life, which everyone has just about all the time, is that it feels like the worst thing that's happened to you or a very difficult thing that's happened to you. But like once you get past it, you can retrospectively view it as like, oh no, this was like super important to happen, even though it sucked. Like if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am now, right? Or I wouldn't know what I know now because I've learned from that kind of thing, right? Because without difficulty and obstacle, as you say, there's no growth, there's no change. You're just remolding things. And even that doesn't really work because that worked for someone once or maybe a few people. But when you try it, it just doesn't work the same, right? And so I've been using that a lot, like personally, to that idea of like, okay, this challenge or this obstacle feels like it sucks a lot, but like ultimately this is better for me because I get to grow from it, right? And then if you can approach a challenge or an obstacle that way, it makes it a lot easier. And there's also less pressure, because it's like, well, if you fail or if you succeed, it's like you don't even really know how that's going to turn out for you. You don't really know which one's going to be better, right? You haven't.
Exactly.
You think you know, like, or you hope it goes one way, right? But actually, you don't know if that's the right way, because
No,
it might lead
That's
to
like,
some other crazy shit.
it's like the core of suffering. It is the core of suffering. It's just wanting this experience to be something else.
Correct.
There's so many weird layers to that, you know? I want this to sound differently. I want this to feel like, oh my gosh. Like, I experience it every day with music. It's just a habit in creating, right? Because it at the same time, it also feels like a cheat code in a sense, to be like, yes, this is it. This is the perfect thing I've been looking for. You know,
Right.
oh, and so is this, and so is it. You know what I mean? And because you can really get into like a strange kind of flow state like that, but stretching into everything, yeah, like that. Just what you explained right there. That is the core of suffering. Just
Yeah.
wanting to
it's
be
true.
something else, even though you don't know. You don't know if that thing isn't the thing you're looking for, or
Yeah, and very
it
often
will
the
lead.
thing that you think you really don't want is actually what you're going to do, and it's going to be what's best for you. But you just don't know that at the time. And so you're like, no, I want to avoid that at all costs. But then somehow you're like, oh, I guess I'm doing it now. And then afterwards you're like, okay, yeah, I see. And then you're, or in a different way, you're like, no, like I need or I want this thing to happen. Like, because when this happens, you know, then I'll be able to feel okay about myself or about life. And well, that's just not true, because once you get that, let's say you do get whatever you want, like there's some temporary, you know, joy or whatever it is that you get from it. But then your mind will just be like, what's next? You know, or
Exactly.
there's still this missing, or there's still that missing, or this still sucks, or this isn't good enough yet, or there's an endless amount of like mental interpretations of why things should be different from the way they are, even though they already are a certain way. Very often we're just like, no, I don't want it to be this way. This way is wrong, right? This moment, even though you can't change the moment necessarily, like the first step is definitely just accepting what is in the present moment, right? It's like, otherwise you're just fighting reality the whole time. And that's very stressful. And then it causes a lot of suffering, as you say. Because like I've found for me, like once I was able to stop projecting so much of myself into the future or the past. So in the past, it's, you know, instead of being like, I wish I hadn't done this, or I wish I had done that, or if only this would have happened, or if only this would have gone this way, then things would be fine, right? Which is also not true, because you don't know how things would have turned out had it gone differently. There's an uncountable number of interactions and shit that goes down. So you don't even know that that would have been better for you. It might have ended up with you dead in 3 days or something. You know, how do you don't know. You're just assuming that like if the one thing had changed, then everything would be right? And then in the from like a future projection perspective, it's like, oh, once this happens, then I can, you know, start living. As the expression goes.
It's the worst thing. It's the worst
Yeah,
thing.
or like one day I'll make it. Make what?
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
something I deal with a lot.
Yeah.
And I see so much of, especially in the music industry, and I guess in all arts industry, because like everyone just wants to make it, you know. But it's a trick. It's a paradox, right? Because you're here, you're there, you're where you want to be. You can make whatever you want, whether you're a musician or whether you're an actor. Like, you know, this is your scene or whatever. But it's like, yeah, it's crazy. It's so easy to
Right.
let
And
that
like once you
cloud.
Yeah, and even once you get there, then you're going to want something else.
Yeah, and then you
Right.
missed the whole, honestly, the good part of getting there.
Right. Or even if you didn't miss it, you'll be like, I want more. right?
Yeah, that too, and you still won't be satisfied.
Yeah. But like ultimately, that satisfaction does exist, right? But it has to come prior to anything in the world out there. It's got to come from a place of like, I'm happy just with everything as it is. Even if there's some parts that seem to be going bad or negative, it's like, that's okay, but I'm still just living and appreciating the present moment with its good and bad, right? And that way you get to journey through life and experience it fully, without trying to fix it or make it fit, your vision of how you think things should be, instead of just appreciating how things are, right? And this takes us back to like the KSR1 guy who was like, see God in everyone, right? You can choose to do that.
And that's the thing too, is like, as soon as you come, and like, again, like another paradox in it is like, as soon as you accept and open yourself to whatever is at this moment, that's the moment you can start to change it if you don't enjoy it, but yeah, it's a weird balancing act, because it's weird, like, why aren't you able to change it when you don't accept it, but when you accept it, you can change it?
Yeah, it's a very difficult paradox. And life is full of paradoxes, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, you just can't get around them.
No.
But yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. Because like, you can only change something once you first accepted it to be as it is, right? Because if you're pretending it's something else, then you're trying to change something that doesn't exist except in your mind, right? And so you can only really change what you see as truth in the now, right? Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's a problem for
everyone, and it's definitely easier said than done.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but oh dude, so I heard this really cool like expression recently where it was like, I can't remember exactly what it was in reference to, but the statement was, train until the training takes over.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. Yeah.
And I think that applies to even like spiritual practice, where it's like, the beginning part of it is like extreme, or just self-improvement in general. The beginning part's extremely difficult because it's new, it's different, it's not how you normally go about things. You got to kind of like make a lot of effort to do it, put in a lot of willpower, but then at some point the training takes over and then it becomes your like default mode of existence, right? Yeah. And that's definitely true in music, where you're not thinking about what you're playing, you're just playing.
Yeah.
Right.
For me, it's been really important in habits, like making habits and stuff.
Yeah.
Especially around music production, because like something that I said to myself probably has been said before, but the process is the product. It's cool that it rhymes, sort of. It's got the pro thing, but yeah,
it's an alliteration.
It's alliteration. Okay, good to know. But yeah, I've been noticing that.
English facts.
So, if you focus so much on like, again, like the outcome or this end goal or whatever, this some place you want to be or something you want it to be, then you're focused on the product, right? But like when I say to myself, the process is the product, that helps actually just like ground me in the moment. Because I was like, wait a minute, what I'm doing right now, what I'm being, the experience I'm having in this moment is leading up to that product, to that, the full blooming of the thing I'm going to make, right? So it's just like, again, like that's a huge perspective shift. But
right. And you can't get there without where you're at.
Exactly.
Or even if you did, it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, and where you're at is always where you're at. You're always where you're at.
Deep. That's deep, man. You're at where you're at, and that's that,
Yeah, there we go.
That's a good chess piece.
That.
You're at where you're at, and that's that.
I like that.
That would be cool. What was I going to say? So wait, so what song did you write today? What's it about?
It's about being scared to die. It's about
Okay.
being basically scared about everything that changes, you know? And I sort of, this is partly from personal experience and partly
Mm-hmm.
from like a collective experience, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
frame the song as my personal experience. And
Nice.
but basically the chorus line is, and yet I die in your arms.
Okay.
And every night I die in your arms. So I kind of twisted it into like a love song, is that though everything else scares me, though, you know, all these other experiences of death, you know,
Yeah.
the seasons changing, getting old, actually dying, stuff like that. Even though that scares me, the experience of love, like that merging, that kind of losing yourself, I frame that as a death, but there's like a sweetness to it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like that's, I'm just showing that there's like a form of death that most people aren't scared of, right?
Right.
And
And
maybe
so do you
that's
frame it
what
like,
death can feel like.
right?
But
And so do you frame it like love transcends death, or it's a kind of death? Or was it both?
lyrically, I think just it connects it, like it just kind of is like that. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
musically, I think musically it might feel like a transcendence,
Right.
um, which is what I love about music, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a
Because I
full
always find,
experience.
yeah, and you can't really argue music, right? Words you can argue, you know, someone can
Yeah.
have a different opinion and whatever, and you have to respect that, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
find music, it's free from argument,
Yeah.
usually, the
If
experience of
people
it,
don't like
right?
it, switch it off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the people who it teaches, like it touches, they understand, and
Mm-hmm.
nothing more needs to be said, which is really great.
Right. Yeah, it's cool. It really does transcend like ordinary communication. It's really weird that you bring up that that's what the song that you wrote today, because so my sister's currently doing a placement for her social work master's degree at a hospital, and yesterday she told us about this guest lecturer that they had come in, right, to talk about death and grieving and dying, right, um, and so this lecturer like ran everyone through this experiment. It's kind of just like a little thought experiment, right? I think we should do it now. It's fun. Okay. So how it goes is you are given 5 minutes to live, right?
Sick.
So you've given 5 minutes to live, or you have 5 minutes left to live. Depends how you want to view it. All right.
Okay.
So here's what to think about. Where are you? Where do you want to be? So you can be anywhere. I'm not saying it's 5 minutes from now. It's like, in this hypothetical, you can be wherever you want. So where do you want to be? Who do you want to be with? And what do you think your experience is going to be like of those 5 minutes? And then there's a part two, which we can get to, but we'll just start off with that.
I feel like it'd be very chill, to be honest. Like I'd probably be crying, you know. Just I guess for some reason in this thought experiment, I'm not freaking out, but
Mm-hmm.
most likely I would freak out a bit. But I would want to be here. Like I would want to be in my house, just because it's like, you know, I've spent so much time here,
Tom.
and it's home, right? Exactly, it's home, and just to have like one last moment to just soak it all in. And honestly, like I wouldn't even need to say goodbye, you know? Like I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to make a scene out of it. I just like want to be like super casual, just be like say I love you to my parents and my brother and just like, you know, really mean it for one last time. I think
Would you want
that's
them to be with you?
Yeah, yeah. Depends how dramatic
Don't
it was. Like if I
you
was
don't
just
have
like
to. It's your
fading
scenario.
away, if I was like actually dying, like I was like, then I'd like yeah,
Yeah,
I'd want them to be around because that seems like it kind of suits the. But if I would just like just like evaporate, I think I just like want to be there,
as people do.
and then
You know.
they're going about they're
Yeah.
going about cleaning the dishes and like doing work, and then I just like disappear.
Yeah.
Everything is as it was.
Like in
Yeah.
ashes,
Yes.
but
Yes.
without an ash pile. You know.
Or like bubbles, just like bloop.
Yeah. Blop, blop, blop. What a sound effect, you know? Everyone's like, what was that? And they were like, oh no, it's
Holy, how'd they
just
do that?
Chris just, bubbled out of existence. Why? I mean, he was playing this hypothetical game and, one thing led to another, and that's just how we got here. But that's really interesting, right? Because it really also like gets you to think about what's important to you, right? And like particularly with like relationships with other people, it's like, yeah, but when it comes down to it, it's like you don't know that you don't have 5 minutes to live. Everyone dies.
Right.
No one gets out alive, and it could be soon. I mean, you hope it's not, but like it could be. And so it's a really cool exercise. For me, I had a bit of a weird experience of it. Like when my sister, told us about it, she was like, okay. So for me, I was like, okay, I want to be in nature somewhere, right? It doesn't have to be a specific place, but just like in a natural environment, like a forest or a mountain or maybe on the beach or something like that, where the temperature is nice. That's important because I hate when it's too hot or too cold. That just makes me mad and angry. So it's not a way to die. But let's say it's good temperature, everything's going well. No rain while I'm dying. I don't think, well, maybe that's quite poetic, but like, then you're trying to like not get rain in your eyes and shit like that. But anyway, so I'd want to be in nature. And the truth is I would actually want to be by myself, right? And it's not that I would like not, it's not because it's just weird. I just feel like that's what I would want. I mean, I don't really have a good reason for it, I suppose. It's just like, I'm not saying other people shouldn't know or, care or whatever it is. It's not that. It's just that it's like, no, I think I would just want to be able to just sit there and just, breathe for a few minutes and then go through whatever it is that happens when you die. And then afterwards, my family can bury me or do whatever they want to do. But it was weird because my sister was like, yeah, most people aren't saying that shit. They're like, no, I want to be around people. They're like, I'm I need people there with me. And I was like, all right, thanks, but whatever. I'm just being honest. But that's weird. What do you think that means? What do you think that means?
For
Why do you
you?
think I want to? Yeah, why do you think I want to be by myself?
Well, here's an anecdote, sort of.
Go for it.
Well, I remember hearing Alan Watts talk about how in India, I don't know if it still happens, but there's like how like when in our culture people get old and then we just like throw them into like old age homes and let them like fizzle away. In India, what happens sometimes, I guess, is that people drop everything. They drop their name, they drop the role they're playing in society, and they will go and live in nature, and they will go die alone, and they'll live their days out as this free thing in freedom with nature and such, and not have to worry about all that,
The troubles
all
of the
this
world.
crap. Exactly, yeah. And so I feel like there are.
How do they
people who
know when to
definitely-
do that? Like, is it
That's a
when
good
you reach an
question.
age, or is it like, oh, I feel sick and I feel like I'm dying, so I'm gonna go cruising, or
I don't know. It's a
you
good
know?
question.
Yeah,
I don't know how close it is to death. Then people would do that. I mean, you always hear about like seedies like living in the forests or whatever.
You hear about what?
Playing their seedies. I think they're called cities or seedies.
What are those?
Siddhi. They're like
Okay.
spiritual people
Right.
in India, right? Who live separate from society. I remember I have this book. It's right here. Through Music to the Self.
Nice.
And he went to India to learn sitar back in the 60s, before I think the Beatles made it famous.
It's a cool instrument.
It's a wicked instrument.
Yeah.
It's so great. And what's interesting is in Indian music, they have scales. They only use scales. In American music, in Western music, there's like the bass line changes, right? You know, the bass line changes. For them, they have one bass note the entire time. So the way they express themselves is through all the different scales, the different organization of pitches you have over one bass note, right? And these scales are connected to different seasons and different times of day. But in this analogy that he writes in the book, basically he was traveling through this river and he got really sick. And so he was like about to pass out and he was getting like really cold. And then all of a sudden, like he hears this music and he looks around and there's this Siddhi, this Indian guy living in a hut, playing a sitar and singing this song. Or he's actually playing a tempura, which is just like a drone instrument, just doom, 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 and you can sing over that. And he starts singing it, and all of a sudden he feels his body getting incredibly hot, and then he blacks out, and then he wakes up in the hut, kind of thing.
Wild.
So just a wacky analogy about like I have no
And then
idea.
what happens?
And then he starts to learn the sitar from this guy.
I mean, that guy, that's not the first time it's happened. This guy's knocking people out whenever they come near him, you know?
No, but
And then
I
he's
think
like,
it was like a healing situation. It was
No,
like
I
a
know,
healing
for sure.
situation.
I don't mean it in a mean way. I'm just saying like that this
Okay.
CD guy, he knows what's up. He's like, when I play
Yeah, for
music,
sure.
shit goes down. And then if
Yeah,
people are
exactly,
watching me,
exactly.
sometimes I need to catch them because they might hit their head on the rocks or, you know, whatever it
watching
is.
out.
And then I teach them how to jam. And then, you know, they go knock some motherfuckers out too. And then that's how you heal the world. Easy
Exactly.
peasy. Right?
One sitar string at a time.
Yeah. Can you make a sitar sound with your mouth? Like, do you know how to... Bam, bam. Can you make that sound?
Ding, 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 ding. No, not really. The
That's
thing
funny.
the
It is
sitar
very,
has-
like, dingy.
Yeah, it is a very dingy instrument.
Bang,
Ding.
bang, bang. It feels like plucking a lot more than, like, guitar, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I mean, I don't know if that's how you play it, but that's what it sounds like to a non-professional ear.
You
That's
play
me.
it like a guitar. I think you pluck it with your fingers. Like you pluck it. They don't have picks. They don't use
Pluck,
picks.
pluck. How many
Pluck
strings?
it. It's four. It's 4 strings.
4.
But the cool thing is what really gives it its sound. It has like these things called sympathetic strings on it, which are there's like 40, 50 of them. And they're just strings that hang there. You don't play them, but they resonate when you play the other strings.
That's cool.
So it kind of gives it that shimmer.
That's so clever. Man.
Yeah.
How do people come up with this shit, you know? Like, imagine
I
who
think it's
invented the
drugs.
sitar?
I
Drugs.
think it's drugs.
Like
Sure,
psychedelic
it's
drugs.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, okay, maybe, but I mean, how does that lead to, let's add 40 strings just for the resonance?
I mean, I don't think it's a big stretch from realizing that things resonate.
That's true.
You know?
I suppose you pluck one string and you're like, oh, look, the second one resonates. And then you're like, let's add a
Imagine if I
bunch
had
more of
50.
those ones. Yeah.
Yeah,
Infinite
exactly.
resonance.
Exactly. It must have been beautiful.
Yeah.
Especially like tripping. Oh my gosh.
With sitar music.
Yeah, yeah. Or even like, you know, at the dawn of that instrument or whatever. I mean, it has like it's like super long lineage, right? It's just like a gourd with a string, right? So it's like really hard to trace where that came from. I mean, it's obviously Africa. Africa started everything instrument wise. and then it just kind of,
Yeah.
grows. And
Well, I think the current theories is that like all people came from Africa anyway. You know?
exactly.
Way
So
back
I
when.
guess it's not saying much.
Yeah. No, it's just in accordance with the, history of things. I wonder what the oldest instrument was. It was probably a drum.
No.
No?
Drum's a little complicated. If you think simpler, I think they call them idophones, something like that. Basically, it's just hitting two sticks together, clapping.
Oh,
but using sticks.
You're right. You're right. That would make sense. Yeah, drums are complicated because you got to have the like air pocket, you got to have the air pocket, and then the skin, and then dun 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 dun, or whatever, you know.
That was good.
Plucking makes more sense too. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm a drum expert. You know, dun 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 dun. You know, that's how it goes. I don't know why I'm playing it up here. That's usually where people play drums. I know, notoriously, just above their head. They're just like.
But if you were like a really short bongo player, that would work. You know,
that would be cool.
Yeah,
that's what I would want to see if I was seeing the bongos. It's just two hands above, and then no head, right? So it's just the hands, and then just. And then you're like, holy shit, what is going on? Or, it'd be funny if what's that giant thing, like a cello? So it is a cello, right? They are giant. They're like giant guitars. So it'd be funny.
They're bigger, but the biggest one is like a double bass,
Double bass. Sure, let's go with that one. So what you got to do is you got to have a double bass, and then you got to have a small person, like either a child or like a little person standing behind it or whatever, and then just the arms come round, right? And so you're just seeing arms playing. Man, they should make a play about this. I mean, it would be brilliant because it would just be arms and instruments, and you wouldn't see the people. I think it would be great.
I would enjoy it. I would definitely.
We should call someone. We should call someone to have this made. Call
I'd
the
help
people
out for sure. Yeah, I mean, I know enough musicians that probably.
What would you want to play?
The bongos.
Just your arms.
Oh, just my arms? Yeah, definitely the bongos. Or or an organ.
Maybe you could wear like a green screen suit so we could edit you out afterwards, except just from your like elbows. They're just arms playing on the organ. With those big pipes, church music, whatever it is, notorious for organ work. That would be cool though, and just the arm show could be called something like that. You could have you get like those people who like don't have arms and then they do cool shit with their feet. So you could have one of those people come and play a musical instrument, and that can be like one of the arcs of the show where it's just like, oh shit, it's just a leg guy. And he's just jamming out with feet, and everyone's like, what? That's impossible. What? But, he could get all the frets and everything just with his toes.
I'm sure there's someone out there. There's like a whole genre of Rubik's Cube solving where you just use your feet.
Dude, some people are the most phenomenal, like, artists, like, painting with their feet. Mm-hmm. It's insane. In fact, you know what? It's weird. You see it a lot in... like Africa and South Africa, where you have these people who are struggling to like make money, and a lot of them have like some deformities or something like that, so let's say they don't have arms, and then they just get super creative with their feet because that's all they can do, and then they just I guess they just do it, and they have some natural talent, and then they sell their paintings like on the side of the road, because they're not like professional artists necessarily, and then but you sit and you watch them do it with their feet, and you're like, this is unbelievable. Like it's really insane how much control and dexterity you can train your feet to have.
Yeah, that's awesome. It makes sense though.
Yeah.
Have you seen monkeys' feet? They're crazy.
True. Yeah, they have the nice like thumb foot though.
Oh yeah, right. I feel like
those would be cool.
Yeah, had that at one point.
Yeah, we missed out. Our feet are bullshit. They're just flat.
Yeah, I know. They're basically just like nubs at this point.
Yeah. No toe control. It's just at most you could just like extend out your toes, but try like lift one toe without moving your other toes.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, I don't think
do it
it's
with my big toe, sort of.
That's true.
Oh yeah. And put little weights on there, little toe weights.
Toe training. Yeah. Just do like mini curls like this. That'd be funny. But you'd have to like learn firstly how to hold a paintbrush with your toes. So that's difficult. Because you got to find like a leverage point of like 3. You know, like for a pen, you got to hold 3. So how would the brush like not? Because like I'm thinking with toes, how would the brush just not like move about like this? Like how do you need something to secure it?
I think right through the big toe would work fine. I have this stick, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I guess you're right. It's a little loose.
Yeah.
A little loose. But if you just squeeze the whole time, you have a lot of...
What if you put it between some of your smaller toes? Maybe there's less wiggle room.
Oh, for sure.
Nice.
Tickle more.
What are we?
Oh yeah. There's less wiggle room. That works quite well.
That's hilarious.
Oh man, it's a core workout.
These are the real conversations that people need to know about.
Yeah.
If you were going to paint shit with your feet, put the paintbrush in between your second and third toes. Oh yeah, that's cool. Just stick it right through the beard. I can do it.
That's actually through my chin. That hurt a lot.
Oh nice. So you're David Blaine these days.
Yep. Ready?
Yeah. Is that a paintbrush or is that just
this is a wand I made during COVID.
Oh, cool.
I carved
What'd you make it
on
out
board. A stick.
Wood. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, you can still see the original branchiness of it.
Nice. Yeah.
Right. It's even got like see that right there? It's like a thumb. It's like
a
thumb
place
pocket
for your thumb.
Yeah, it's perfect. You can just grab it like that.
Oh, spells and shit.
No, that would kill you. I don't want to do that.
I wonder do you think, okay, here's a real question for you. Do you think that magic works through the internet?
Yes. 100%.
I think it would have to.
Or else it wouldn't be magic.
Yeah, I think it would have to, because just like communication works through the internet, magic would have to go through as well, right?
Yeah, it's
I think
definitely
visually
one of those things.
Yeah, visually it would be problematic because the like spells and shit would have to disappear into the screen and then reappear in order to like have that effect of it working, right? But dude, isn't it so crazy that you can talk to someone anywhere on the planet just with this little device in your hand, and you can actually see like a live video of what's happening in their world at the moment? Like, that's just your phone.
Yeah, I definitely don't take advantage of that. Oh my gosh.
No.
I know it hits me every once in a while too.
But here's the real thing, right? Is I feel like we've reached a point in time where if you're video calling someone unannounced or like unprompted, that's like banging on their door. And it's like, what are you doing right now? Show me. Right? It's super intrusive. Now, you might have some relationships where that's okay, like you're cool with doing that to each other, but like for the most part, if you video call a random person that you kind of are acquainted with, like it's such a bold move, don't you think? Even a phone call these days is pretty bold. I don't know why. It just seems to be that way.
No, totally, it's weird. And but I also feel like we're lazy too. Like I have a friend whose cousin got married recently, and my friend was like the only person out of like 10 people who actually called him to say congratulations. Everyone else sent a text.
Yeah. I mean, the world's so weird, dude. Like, I'm part of that too. Like, I'll be honest, I don't like phone calls. I don't. I like texting. That I can, they're much less intrusive, I feel. I like phone
not
calls.
only is it
but I don't feel the need to phone everyone. Yeah. And it's also like,
it's like
it's so immediate. It's like, we're talking now, There's no like, hey, do you feel like talking? Or like, are you busy with something? Whatever. It's just like, no, like, I'm speaking to you no matter what's going on in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the video just adds that element of like, I want to see it as well.
I want to see it as well.
Yeah.
Look into my digital eyes.
Yeah. It's wild, dude. You know what would be cool in the future when we have like real like VR stuff, or what do you call it? Like projections, what are they called? Holograms. That'll be cool when you can like hologram other people and sit next to them.
Yeah, like in Star Wars.
Yeah. That's gonna be cool. I don't even think that's that far away technologically.
We're still gonna text.
Yeah. Be like, hey, you want a hologram, later or whatever?
It's really just like an extension of like those like pictures they have now on iPhone where like the mouth moves, like you can record it in your face. Do you have an iPhone or a?
No, but I know what you're talking about.
You know this guy?
Yeah.
Right? And it'll move with your mouth. It's just an extension of that, except now it's gonna be like you can just like, oh wow, thanks, dude.
Yeah. You know what would be really wild is if you could like hologram yourself into someone else's like world, basically just like without their like accepting your call, and you just pop up in their room or some shit and you're like, surprise bitch, let's hang out. And then no matter what's going on, you just got to deal with that then. I mean, that would be a lot. I hope we don't really get there, but like in my head that sounds cool. But people would do it to me and I would fucking hate it. If people were just popping up in the middle of the day to just just be there and be like, hey, what's up? I'll be like, okay. Like, hey, what's up?
I'm kind of used to it because I have a grandma. I have a nonna. We call them nonnas. Yeah, nonna.
And she does that to you?
She's fucking crazy, man.
Oh yeah.
But in like the best way.
Wow, what'd she do?
Number one, she calls me every single day.
Nice.
Which is great because it's nice to hear from her. But then
Where
it's
does she
just
live?
like she lives in an old age home, as I was talking about earlier. But yeah. Because we put her there. She just kind of wants to die already.
Right.
Like her last birthday, I was like, no, what do you want for your birthday? Like, blow out the candles, make a wish. And she's like, I want to be gone tomorrow. I was like, you fucking said it out loud. It's not going to come true now. You gotta wait another year.
You gotta keep that shit inside. Cut down,
Fucking her loss, but...
How old is she?
She's 89.
Wow, yeah. That's old, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as old as it gets, but yeah.
No, and her spirit is like incredible. Like she's just constantly like giving love, and I feel like that's her problem. Like that's why she's still alive. Because if she was miserable, she'd be dead a decade ago. But she's like the happiest human being I've ever met. All she does is like watch TV all day. But like when she calls me and she calls my brother and she calls, like it just like rejuvenates her, and she's just like constantly stealing shit from me. Like she's stealing like cereal boxes and fruit and muffins from like the old age home. Like, dude, she sometimes like at the end of the week, because my mom goes to visit her, she'll bring back. Oh, she's
stealing shit for you, not from you.
For me. Oh no, not from me. It's like for me.
I was like, she's breaking into your house and just like stealing your fruit.
No, she just steals stuff for me. It's so cute. Nice.
Yeah.
But
man, it's hard,
It must be like, it makes me so sad when I think about it. Like she's just in that room, just like watching TV all day. Like that would kill me. But I don't know. She's from another time, and she doesn't overthink things, Like I feel like a lot of us do these days.
Yeah.
She doesn't overthink things at all. Like she's very simple. She's happy. Just like saying I love you to someone, like that'll like keep her through the day or whatever. And so I hear from her every day. So it's just like, I usually go through that feeling of like, oh fuck, okay. It's like, I gotta like warm up for this. Cause she's like screaming and just like.
What do you talk to her about?
She she usually what the fuck did we talk about? The stuff she steals for me.
Mm.
And then she always asks me, "Where's my girlfriend? I want to talk to her." And I'm like, "Nana, I don't have one." And she's like, "Don't be cheap. You're so cheap." And then we just talk about like ass. Like
Okay.
she's just like, I'm gonna send you a piece of my culo, which is like ass in Italian. She's
Right.
like, are you gonna eat my culo? I'm like, Nana, you are fucking disgusting.
This has taken a weird turn that I wasn't
And then
expecting.
she just laughs her head off. Like
Oh,
dude,
that's the
you would
best.
think she would die. Like just in that moment, like while she's laughing, because she wheezes
Laughing
so
at her own
hard.
jokes. That's the best.
Man, she's crazy, but it's so fun. And that's
awesome.
pretty much it. She might tell me a story or something.
Yeah.
If she remembers, or like what she's watching on TV, and then she'll just like fuck around though. Like she'll just be like, "I love you, good night." I'm like, "Okay, good night, Nana," and she's like, "No, I don't love you anymore." I'm like, "Fuck," and then like that'll just
Why?
go on for like 5 minutes. It's so funny.
Then she's like, "JK, talk to you tomorrow."
Yeah, and she
That's
really
nice.
makes me think about like what it means to die,
Right.
because she's not making a big stink of it, because
Yeah.
I feel like she's said what she's needed to say. She says I love you in outrageous ways every single day to everyone she meets.
Yeah.
So there's no like big dramatic goodbye, like, you know what I mean? Like she's not, it doesn't feel like she's holding on to anything.
That's the
It's
best.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good way to be,
Totally, man.
It's cool that you got a good connection with her, and you can
Yeah,
make jokes.
I mean, it's quite recent.
Like
It
as
is
a
quite.
COVID.
I mean, no, maybe a year ago. Like I always knew she was wacky and nice, but I think I've just started to grow into it more instead of being that like just like shy kid, like what the heck's my grandma doing kind of thing. Like I've gotten with it, so like
Turn
I'm
that shit up.
I'm screaming at her in the phone
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
She loves it,
Oh man, she loves it. She's always
Yeah.
I'm always making her laugh, so I was like, okay, I think we're on the same page ish now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's, one of the better parts of her days.
For sure. I mean,
Just,
sitting
I
in the
mean,
room.
laughter does that,
Yeah.
Get to spend time with people you love and laugh and whatever it is, and that's the best.
Yeah, laughter is the best medicine. That's what they say.
Cures death.
Cures death. No, we're all fudged. We're all screwed.
Yeah. Rest in peace to all of us.
Rip.
Rip. Anyway,
That was
thanks
fun.
for another great episode, buddy.
Oh, I appreciate it.
It's the best, as always.
It's good to be here.
And thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Enjoy. See ya. Bye.